Let's get some analysis on the EFF 10th anniversary rally and the ANC Veterans League conference. We're joined by political analyst Lukhanyo Vangqa. Lukhanyo, appreciate your time. Now, the 10-year anniversary of the economic freedom fighters is a significant milestone for Julius Malema and his party. How has he managed to build the EFF into a political force that, you know, by all intents and purposes, cannot be ignored in South Africa's political landscape?
Hugo, good afternoon, and afternoon to the viewers as well. The event yesterday was quite a milestone for the EFF, having been a significant player in the South African political landscape for the past 10 years, really, having gone to Parliament, rejuvenated that institution to one that is more vibrant, more lively, more relevant, and more interesting to people out on the streets. It no longer was the boring, stuffy, old people's playground that it used to be, looking at how the EFF also brought to the center of the political debate in this country the issue of land and land hunger amongst the black people, the majority in this country, and also how the EFF has championed the ideas of anti-corruption and protecting state coffers from those that would pillage it with the pay back the money chance that we saw with them in Parliament, forcing President Jacob Zuma to pay back the money that was used to build Nganhla. And also how the EFF has actually shaped debate and public discourse on the idea of what coalition governments are or can be. In 2016, they were the most significant player and decision maker after the local government elections, taking Tshwane and the city of Johannesburg away from the ANC together with Nelson Mandela Bay and handing that over to the DA. So the EFF has been a very difficult political player to ignore in the South African landscape, and the fact that they were able to bring 100,000 capacity crowd to FNB yesterday is testament to just that political impact of the organization that Julius Malema, together with the founding members of the EFF, even those he called political staff riders, some would call factory folks, the political players such as Andile Mchama that were there in the founding of the EFF, Kenny Kunene, together with other political players, how that organization has grown and sort of become this formidable player that it is today, that's able to fill a capacity crowd stadium and bring 100,000 people out into that venue is testament actually to what they have built together with the leadership core that they have there. So quite a significant player the EFF has become in the political landscape of this country.
Now, the one thing that he did talk about is what he would like to offer the people of South Africa, certainly the young people of South Africa, if his party is in government next year. And he talked about education and free education. Now, his own education journey has been quite remarkable, considering his initial struggles, his pursuit of higher education and qualifications of communication, African languages, and an honours degree in philosophy. Has that influenced his image and support among the youth in South Africa? Is he putting his money where his mouth is?
Yes, absolutely, Hugo. I think the slogan that they came with was to make education fashionable. And we saw just how many people went back to get their post-matric qualifications, even those that left school before they could finish matric, or even those that never pursued post-matric schooling. They were influenced to go back and make education fashionable. And it's not just Julius Malema within that EFF. You've seen plenty of other people, Ndlozi obtaining his PhD, Floyd Shivambu currently pursuing his PhD studies as well. Malema registered at Wits for a master's degree. So they've really made education fashionable. And that has even translated into the other political parties as well. The former spokesperson of the ANC went and graduated for his post-matric qualification at UNISA. So really they have made education fashionable. But education as well is quite a critical has quite a critical role to play in South Africa's post-apartheid dispensation, Hugo, owing to the fact that it was denied to so many of the majority of this country that they never really got the opportunity firstly, but even when they got the opportunity, they never got adequate resourced institutions that they could study in. You look at quite the disjuncture between education that you get in township schools and those that you get in former Model C schools that was destined or exclusively for the white citizens of South Africa. So the fact that Malema and the EFF could make education fashionable in this country, where we know it's such an important ladder for anyone that wants to grow in terms of social and class standing in this country. It's quite an important social ladder. So it's something that they must be commended for, and the fact that fees must fall, the generation of fees must fall as well, also made education quite desirable, quite fashionable, and made it a bit more accessible, even though we don't have free education yet in this country.
Now, a number of analysts have talked about how strategic Julius Malema is. Now, your opinion on, is he a strategic thinker? Is the success of the EFF, the stuff that we're talking about now, that he's gone back to school, he's still pursuing studies, as are the people that are in his enclave, if you will. Is he a strategic leader?
Yes, I think one could make that assertion that Julius Malema is a strategic thinker, is a strategic planner. He calls himself a master tactician, but he also has the ability to make very significant tactical moves that advance both his career and the prospects of the EFF as well. But I think we must just be a bit careful with giving too much regard to someone's ability to think very strategically, because they do blunder at times, and when those blunders happen, they're quite costly for them. You look at Jacob Zuma, who was thought to be quite the strategic thinker and tactician as well, and look where he ended up with the strategic blunders that he also made along the way. You look at Didi Mabuza, who's another politician that was also fancied to be quite a strategic and tactical thinker, and today he doesn't occupy any position of power in this country. So I think we must just not blow out of proportion the ability of someone to think very strategically or be a strategic planner, because politics is quite a dynamic game that you play, and you can never win all the battles that you take up, even if you are a master tactician, as Julius Malema calls himself. Well,
strategic thinking does not suggest that those around you are not thinking strategically or countering your strategic thoughts. And one of those issues that has been discussed is the EFF's disruptive behavior in Parliament and attempts to prevent President Cyril Ramaphosa from delivering speeches. And that's drawn a lot of criticism in such segments, and also respect in others.
Yeah, I think the criticism against that would be unwarranted, because that is the brand of the EFF. Its ability to be radical, its ability to be militant is what resonates with the people that support the EFF. It might be off-putting to some people, but those are people that would ordinarily not have voted EFF in any way. Gentlemen politics don't appeal to the EFF, don't apply or appeal to the voters and supporters of the EFF. The voters of the EFF quite like that militancy, they quite like that radicalism, and it's been very efficient, that radicalism that they've shown in Parliament. It had the ability to get President Jacob Zuma to pay back the money when they disrupted his speeches, when they blocked his State of the Nation addresses, demanding that he pays back some of the money that was used to build his Nganta homestead in KZN. So they've been very efficient, and there's been some efficacy to that radicalism and militancy that they brought into Parliament. It's also rejuvenated Parliament as well, Hugo.
So let's talk about the Achilles heel in the Julius Malema camp. Where would we find it if we were to look for it?
I think it's the ostentatious display of materialism and material that is quite a contradiction to its egalitarian outlook and its Sankarist approach, or its Sankarist philosophies. Sankara was quite a humble leader. I think when they said when he died, he only had a bicycle and a TV set, and those were his only belongings. But if you look at the ostentatious displays of Gucci, Louis Vuittons, of these scandals that come out of this decadent lifestyle that these leaders seem to lead when they say that they speak for the poor. So that is quite a significant Achilles heel for the EFF. It's off-putting for a number of people and a number of sympathizers that they will see Julius Malema walking around in Gucci loafers that cost upwards of 37,000, and that is out of kilt with what he earns as a parliamentarian, which seems to suggest to some people that is living beyond his means and therefore has undeclared sources of income. So that's quite off-putting for a number of people. And it's an Achilles heel because it also undermines their anti-corruption message that they seem to be driving as the EFF. So if there could be a significant move away from the ostentatious display of material by the EFF, I think that could help to bolster the image and the brand of the EFF so that they no longer have to come out in public and defend a leader who seems to lead a lifestyle that is out of kilt with what he earns as a humble servant of the people in parliament.
We're having a conversation with the political analyst around the EFF's 10th anniversary, which was celebrated yesterday at what could be called a filled F&B stadium. Now, Lukhanyo, Malema's promises of economic freedom and policies like nationalisation have been met with both support and criticism. How do analysts view the feasibility and potential consequences of some of these policies? Land without expropriation, for instance.
I think the EFF has both the wherewithal and the will to see some of their policies implemented. If you look at the fact that the policies that they have seemed to suggest have found resonance and favor within the ANC as well, which is the biggest political party in parliament, and therefore the EFF has the ability to band together with the ANC when there's a meeting of minds. For an example, on the land expropriation without compensation, there was just a minor disagreement between the ANC and the EFF at the last minute. However, they were able to carry that constitutional amendment proposal to pass firstly in Parliament so that it could go out to public consultations. And if you look at as well the nationalization of the Reserve Bank, that bill is currently before Parliament, and the ANC might support that bill because it is a standing resolution of their own conferences to nationalize the South African Reserve Bank. So the EFF has both the wherewithal and the capacity to drive some of these policies that they seem to champion. And I think those are much more feasible than we think. Obviously, there will be a lot of resistance from established interests, from monopoly capital that has a lot to lose from some of the policies of the EFF, and also political parties that don't share an ideological background with the EFF, such as the DA, together with that sort of right wing elements of the FF Plus and the Herman Mashaba's Action SA would not support some of these policies of the EFF. However, I think the EFF has the ability to band together with the ANC and drive some of these policies. I'm a Pan-Africanist, I'm a socialist, so I believe strongly in some of the policies of the EFF, including the integration of the African continent, so that Africa can be united and stand as one on global platforms, which would give it much more ability to drive geopolitics and be a part of the changing geopolitical nature of the global landscape.
Well, Julius Malema was very bold in his assertions, and some have suggested it was just a politicking yesterday, as he suggested that the EFF would be in government significantly next year. So let's talk about the strides that the EFF has made over the last 10 years. How much of that has been their own doing, and how much of it has been about the challenges that the ANC has faced?
I think the EFF, as you can see from the electoral loss suffered by the ANC, that it has eaten away a significant chunk of ANC support. And those that it hasn't eaten away has sort of driven to become stay-at-home voters that don't go out and support the ANC. So the EFF really has been a significant player in the fact that it has gained about 1.8 million votes, and you compare that to what the ANC has lost, over 3 million voters from its electoral successes of 2004. So the EFF really has eaten away in some of the ANC support. And it's a bit of both, Hugo. It's the fact that EFF has driven quite a unified message of fighting for the underdog, fighting corruption, and fighting for the majority that are excluded from the economy in this country. And the fact that the ANC has some self-inflicted injuries that it has had to face in electoral campaigns of 2019, coming from the Zuma eras, and also having a Cyril Ramaphosa president that didn't seem to resonate with KZN and the electoral support that the ANC lost in KZN, dropping from over 65% to just under 54% in the last election. So some of those challenges are ANC created, but some are really the ability of the EFF to mobilize and galvanize its voting base to go out and vote. But there's a conundrum, just quickly, Hugo. The EFF appeals to a significant target market in that it appeals to young people, and young people make up the majority of this country. But the conundrum here is that young people are the most apathetic voters as well. They're not registered to vote. They don't go out to vote. They don't believe voting is going to change anything. As a result, the EFF finds resonance in a target market that has significant potential, but unfortunately is apathetic and therefore doesn't go out to vote. And that's why you don't see the support and mobilization that the EFF is able to bring to the ground, and also its electoral support. Those two don't seem to tally. It's very popular, some people would say, on Twitter, but when it comes to the ballot box, its voters or its voting base just simply doesn't come out to vote. And that's the conundrum that the EFF needs to resolve for it to make significant gains at the ballot box.
Lukhanyo, to wrap up the conversation, let's talk a little bit about the ANC Veterans League elective conference, which elected Snooky Zikalala as its president. And he's come out all guns blazing, having a go at Vice President Paul Mashatile, amongst other things. What's your take on, certainly, his attack, if you will, on the Vice President, and certainly how significant are the veterans as a player in this chessboard called the ANC?
So the Veterans League is only as significant as it has credibility. And its credibility comes from the fact that they've had a long life of service to the ANC, and that gives them this credibility. However, that can be undermined once the Veterans League is seen to be factional and doesn't seem to have the same moral umbrage at either of the factions that are at play at any given time inside of the ANC. And I think what Snooky Zikalala did is just to show his hand that really he's a Cyril Ramaphosa man and a Cyril Ramaphosa supporter. He comes in for a second term and forms part of this greater consolidation of power by the Ramaphosa faction, having taken power in the ANC Youth League, taken it and consolidated with the Women's League last week, and now they've taken the Veterans League. So there might be a view that the Veterans League is nothing but another factional outpost of the Ramaphosa faction, and therefore anything that he says doesn't really have credibility, but is driven by factional interests. And this fight that is this Cold War that seems to exist between President Ramaphosa and his deputy Paul Mashatile, Snooky Zikalala is only but taking sides in that factional battle, and therefore the ANC Veterans League might lose credibility as a result of that. But there is a deputy president of the Veterans League that doesn't seem to be a Ramaphosa man, Mavuso Msimang, who had called for Cyril Ramaphosa to step aside. So it would be interesting how the Veterans League is able to firstly sharpen those contradictions and resolve them internally amongst themselves, but also what significant role they can play in the greater politics of the ANC. When it comes to conferences, they only take about 30 people to voting, Hugo. So from a numbers perspective, they are quite insignificant in the ANC.
But the one thing that they seem to have gotten right yesterday was have an organized conference, and that's not synonymous with the ANC conferences.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely not. And that being on time was actually ruined by the Secretary General of the ANC, who arrived over 2 hours late for that conference. But the veterans were able to deliver a conference that is complete, that is on time, that is logistically sound, given that it's a much smaller conference to organize than the other conferences of all the other leagues of the ANC. But they were able to deliver it on time, and it was a complete conference, unlike the ANC National Conference, the ANC Women's League Conference that didn't finish, as well as the Youth League Conference that also didn't finish. That of the Veterans League was able to complete its business on time. So commendable for them to have done that.
Lukhanyo Vangqa, political analyst, appreciate your insights as always.